Peeps! Today I'm going to talk a little bit about my adoption story and why we chose to adopt. From the time I was very, very young, I always had female problems, and I started developing polyps and precancerous cells. Sorry if it's a little TMI for anybody. And then eventually I had to have a hysterectomy. And we looked at so many different options. We looked at adopting kids from overseas and getting on waiting lists with adoption companies here. And then I looked into foster care, and foster care has literally hundreds of thousands of children available right now that need families. And I know a lot of people don't want older children. They want to start off as babies. And, you know, we were part of that group, but there are so many teenagers that need love, that we thought it was a really, really worthwhile cause and a way to go that we wouldn't also have to spend so much money on the adoption process. So how adoption in my state works is you go to an informative session, and then you have a home study, and you go to classes, and we did all that. And then you can be placed on, you just want to do foster care, or you want to do foster adopt, which of course we did. It was by no means easy. It's really, really hard, even foster adopt, because they do place with you children that they believe are going to become adoptable, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be. And we had, give or take, upwards of 15 children come through our home, and we ended up adopting 2 of them. And there were a few kids that we were going to adopt, and it was almost going to happen, but for one reason or another, it didn't. And the whole point of foster care is to place children with permanent families, but they do want to place these children with blood relatives if they can. If there's no blood relative available, then foster parents or outside adoptive parents that are looking for children become an option. So with our youngest boy, Tristan, he is going to be 5 in April. We adopted him. He came right out of the hospital, right to us. We were foster parents for about 2 years with him, and then we adopted him. So we have had him since he was right out of the hospital. And with our 7-year-old, Michael, we got him when he was 1. So we have had him from the time he was 1, and his adoption was a bit more complicated. A lot more went into it, and we didn't finalize his adoption until he was about 4, which is really rare. They really aim to have kids in care under a year, but both my kids had extenuating circumstances that led us to have to wait a little longer for their adoptions. And there's open adoptions and closed adoptions, and by default, any adoption done through DFACS or the Department of Family and Children Services is a closed adoption because the children were removed from their parents for some reason that the court found it necessary to remove those children and put them in a safe environment. I, however, do keep contact with both of my children's biological parents. When you're a foster parent, you meet the parents because you go to court and you see them there. They have here in Georgia something called panel reviews, where a panel come to discuss the welfare of the children and what is going on. So you meet the parents then, and I always found as a foster parent, it benefited my children to be civil or helpful to the biological parents. And I believe it will also help my children. My husband and I do not keep it a secret from our children that they are adopted. I did a lot of research prior to adopting, and most of the time, children who find out later in life they were adopted and were never told feel like they were lied to, don't feel like their foster parents or their adopted parents or their parents, because if you were, how could you lie to me, things like that. So we decided to be open and honest from the beginning, and we do allow contact from the biological parents with our kids, providing we are the boss, they are our children, what we say goes, and you have to be doing the right things. You have to be in the right place in your life, going in the right directions. That means, no crazy. We, at my house, I have a saying, we do happy family. We do not do crazy. So if you got any kind of crazy going on, you're not coming around us. But as long as you're doing happy family and you're doing the right thing at the right time, and you do what you say, and you're gonna follow through, and you're not gonna disappoint the kids if you say you're coming, we're okay with that. And I believe our children will thank us for it later, because they're either gonna see, okay, my mom had an issue, my biological mom and dad had issues when I was a baby, but they worked on it and they kept contact with me. They did the right thing because they knew that they could see me, and they, kept a connection, and my adoptive parents loved me enough to want me to be able to have that connection. Or they're going to see that their foster parent, or their biological parent, they're going to see that their biological parent didn't do the right thing, and they were given every option, not only by the state, but by us. And instead of choosing path A, they chose path B. And it won't be a secret, so it won't be like I'm trying to hide them or keep them from their biological parents. That being said, if the behavior from the biological parents, I think, is going to hurt my child, it's my job to protect them. It's my job to keep them away, and then answer their questions later. And, answer their questions as nicely as possible without having them think that they're not wanted. My biological parents just don't show up, that kind of thing. And we've explained the whole situation. We've explained DFACS as well as you can for, young children. We have explained that we were lucky because we got to choose them. We got to decide to be their parents. All of that stuff we explained, why they came into care and why we ended up with them in a way a child could understand. We don't go into much detail because it can be hurtful. I mean, some of the circumstances surrounding both of my children's removal from their parents are not nice things to hear. And I would never tell them that unless when they're older they asked, or unless I had to for some reason. So that is our adoption story, and that is what I do as far as closed and open adoption. And if anybody has any more question about how I deal with biological parents or about foster parenting, please leave a comment down below. I would be happy to answer any kind of questions. Please keep in mind, I'm not an attorney. I only know what happened in my situation. I only know what happens in my state. I know a lot of adoption processes or foster parenting processes are very, very similar, but I can only go off my experience. And closing out this video, one thing I do want to say is, if you are looking to adopt a child, please, please, please consider a foster child. There are thousands of children. I would still do it. If my children were a little older and could understand, I would still be a foster parent. But there are many, many kids that are ready for adoption right now. Their parents' rights have been terminated and they're just in the system, which is not where you want to be. 7, 8, 9, 10, even as, small babies. Small babies people want to adopt them much more quickly. But if you can find it in your heart for an older child, they need love too. And when you look at the website, you see real scary words like special needs. And it can be something as simple as special needs because they've been in the system more than 2 years. There could be not one other thing wrong with them, and they're termed special needs because they've been in the system longer than 2 years. When you're an older kid and you're in foster care, of course you're going to have some emotional and psychological damage, but it's not like all these kids are broken. They are good kids that just need someone to love them. So you can go to Adopt Us Kids, or It's My Turn Now. You can Google search them, and I'll put the links down below for exactly the website. But you'll see that literally there are hundreds of thousands of kids that need a good home. And you don't have to foster parent at all. You can just find your child, go through the process, and adopt them if that's the route you're looking for. But like I said, any questions, any comments, please leave them down below. Thanks, and have a great day.